Well, good morning. We are in the middle of the Labor Day weekend, which is traditionally the last weekend before summer vacation ends, as school bells will be ringing again later this week. So I hope it's going well for you. Our show this morning is not about school, but it is about children and a place that has been helping them for over 80 years. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, the place that has been helping children for over 80 years is Bay Cliff Health Camp. Bay Cliff is a year-round nonprofit therapy and wellness center for children and adults with physical disabilities. Its priority program is a 7-week summer therapy camp session serving children with orthopedic, speech, hearing, and vision disabilities. Bay Cliff has a new executive director, and this morning we're going to learn more about her and her vision for this unique camp that has been a special part of Upper Michigan for all those years. Her name is Claire Luchen, and she is our guest this morning. Claire, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here.
Very nice to have you with us. Little timeline here now. Tim Bennett has been the executive director at Bay Cliff for about 30 years and announced at the beginning of this year that he was going to retire.
Yes.
And that kind of set some wheels in motion, which brought you into the act. So you were selected as the new executive director, but you've also had a chance to work alongside Tim. How has it gone this summer?
It went really wonderfully, and I arrived at Bay Cliff in April, actually in the middle of that late snowstorm that we had here in the UP, so that was a good welcome home to Upper Michigan. But I did have the entire summer for our summer children's program to kind of shadow with Tim, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of step back and watch. A lot of moving parts at Bay Cliff when you're looking at the kids and both their therapy and then their camp activity needs. And so I feel very fortunate that I had the opportunity to make a lot of observations in addition to just kind of immersing myself in the camp environment. I found that to be really beneficial. This job is definitely a learn by doing.
I'm sure, and we'll talk more about that. And you're kind of doubly stepping into big shoes. Looking back, I do recall the history at Bay Cliff, and John Vargo was there for about 30 years.
Yes.
And now Tim Bennett for about 30 years. Are you ready to take on that next that next series of service?
I am ready, and I'm excited about it. I think that the traditions and the long-time mission that has been established with Bay Cliff and sustained all those years is something that, one, I'm very supportive of, and it's nice to see an organization that has been able to stay true to that mission for so long, and I think that's part of the reason why Bay Cliff has such wide support across the UP and beyond. And so being able to step into something and an organization that fundamentally has the foundational work so well established, I think is very beneficial to anyone coming in a leadership role and transition.
So let's give our audience a chance to get to know you a little better. You're actually a Marquette native.
I am. I graduated from Marquette High School, and so yes, I grew up in Marquette.
Do you have any memories from Marquette from those early years of a young
Well,
life?
it seems, and I know that as a child things always seemed bigger perhaps, but it seemed like we got more snow more often when I was younger. But as far as, the Marquette community, I think the thing that has stayed with me no matter where I've gone is just my family worked very diligently to instill an appreciation for the outdoors and for natural beauty. And really there are no places that I have found that surpass what Marquette and the UP has to offer. Lake Superior spoils you for all bodies of water forever. And so I think that when I look back on my childhood and just how enriched it was by having this environment to explore and to appreciate is something that I feel very fortunate.
And even though it's changed in many ways, it still has the classic look of Marquette. With the
It
old
does, but it
sandstone
has
buildings.
changed. It has.
There are a lot of changes. After graduation, you headed for Purdue University, but that was just the beginning of your educational pursuits. Fill us in on the rest of that.
Well, when I went to Purdue, my goal was to be a park ranger. And I think, once again, it was that natural environment and the appreciation of it that really kind of drew me in. But once I got to Purdue, I had a professor that invited me to be a teaching assistant for him and to teach a lab class on genetics and ecology to non-science majors. And I said, oh, I don't really think so. I don't really like teaching. That really hasn't appealed to me. And he really encouraged me to try it. And I fell in love with it, just absolutely fell in love with teaching. And so I added a teaching certification to my biology major. And after I graduated from Purdue and started teaching in a high school classroom, I went on to get my master's degree at Indiana Wesleyan in leadership and moved into some administrative roles at the building level at the high schools. And then went on and got my doctorate from Indiana University in education policy and moved into central office positions. And while I loved all of those stages of my career, the part that I loved the most was when I was in direct contact with kids.
Okay.
And I missed that. And realized very quickly as a central office employee that I knew one child well, and that was a child that I tutored on Thursdays.
Okay. So you had obviously teaching experience, but you also did have management experience
Yes.
through these assignments as well.
Yes.
And you had several different assignments in the Indiana area as an administrator.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna pick it up there and talk some more about what happened after that. But we'll get back to that in just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Back with more on the Ryan Report just 2 minutes from now. Our guest again this morning is Claire Luchen, the new executive director at Bay Cliff Health Camp. We were talking a little bit about some of your early career experience. What made you decide that it was time for a change?
Well, my husband and I had purchased some property up in Big Bay. My family has had property up there my whole life. And so we purchased a cabin up there. And our ultimate goal, our long-term goal was, well, we'll start working on it so that we can move up there after retirement. And then actually my husband was online checking out some ice fishing conditions and noticed the posting for the executive director's position at Bay Cliff. And it kind of sparked my interest, and I thought, well, I'm going to, this is something that, you know, I'm familiar with Bay Cliff. Obviously, I am a member of the Big Bay community in part, and so I applied and found that it was really, as I learned more through the interview process and the application process, was really, really drawn to the work and really felt that I had something to bring to the table.
And I don't mean this to sound chauvinistic at all, but after two very strong male leaders, what did you have to do to convince the board of directors that you could be that next director?
Well, I think that I am hoping that what was most convincing for them is just my commitment to children. I've dedicated my life, particularly throughout my career, I've been really drawn to those that do not necessarily thrive in our public school systems. And you know, I think that my dedication and really my relentless pursuit to help all kids fit and for all kids to be successful and have that rich life that they deserve, regardless of how complicated life may be for them. I think that that probably was something that the board appreciated in me. I hope so.
I've mentioned a couple of times the two men who provided the leadership, but it was actually two women who started the organization.
It was, and I remind people of that.
Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, obviously we had two women that started out Bay Cliff, Elba Morse and Goldie Corneliuson, and they were, you know, they were the founders of Bay Cliff. They went up and they bought the farm, and they started serving malnourished children in the UP, and then that moved to serving children with polio and providing them with not only just those health provisions, but also some therapy around their needs that they were going to have moving forward. And actually Bay Cliff is still committed to that. In about a week or two, we're going to have our post-polio camp up at Bay Cliff for some of those youngsters that actually were at Bay Cliff as children. And also looking at how we continue to serve them as adults. So I think that history that Bay Cliff has, and we had our 85th summer camp serving the children of the UP and beyond this summer. And the mission stays very, very much the same. We want them to live more independently, and we want to improve their quality of life. And Bay Cliff stays very, very true to that mission.
And it's obviously been changed over the years, but it actually started out as a home, I think, and then eventually became a dairy farm and a dairy.
Yes, yes. And very quickly they realized that dairy cows don't do well if you can't grow grass. And Bay Cliff is on a gravel pit. And so the farm was not very successful. But I think that, you know, certainly anyone who's been involved in Bay Cliff over the years, I think would be very pleased to see that Bay Cliff as a place, kind of set apart from other places, continues to have a very, very strong mission of serving the people in the Upper Peninsula.
It certainly does. There's much more to the history. We'll focus more on that, but Bay Cliff has expanded beyond its initial role, as you mentioned, but today it's involved in much more, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We have about 30 to 35 programs that go on. Most people, I don't think, realize Bay Cliff operates year-round. Really, December is about the only month where we are not either hosting other community programs that support the mission, or we are hosting programs that are Bay Cliff programs. But we're very busy all year round with both children and adults.
You also make the facility available to some other users, I believe. I know the Marquette Schools, for example, has
We do. All the 5th graders in Marquette Schools come up to Bay Cliff, and all of the 7th graders as well. That has been a long-standing tradition, and we would like to continue that. I think that it is important that every child gets to experience Bay Cliff, and hopefully we would hope that they would have an interest in coming back as counselors or volunteers to help us complete that mission.
And over the years, there's certainly been some capital improvements made to improve the facilities as well.
Yes, we most recently, the Marietti family and others made some significant donations for us to build a wonderful rec center that is really state-of-the-art, and it's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and that allows us not to be quite so dependent upon the weather, which can be pretty unpredictable in the UP. So it allows us to continue to do kind of the activities branch of our camping programs, and not be so dependent on having to be outside in order to accomplish those things. We also have new units for those that are non-ambulatory, our residential units, and then also for the girls. So our emphasis moving forward, we need to make some improvements on our aquatic center, and we also need to make some improvements on our residential buildings for our boys.
Okay, we'll talk more about the future in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Again, our guest this morning is Claire Luchen, the new Executive Director at Bay Cliff Health Camp. I'm not sure people understand quite how broad your responsibilities, or anyone in that position, would be for a facility such as Bay Cliff Health Camp. There's a lot to it, isn't there? There
is a lot to it. So there's obviously the programming, which we need to constantly be making sure that we're aligned to the needs of our kiddos, and our adults and other camping programs that we have. Fundraising is obviously going to be an emphasis that I have moving forward. It's one of my goals to make sure that Bay Cliff can have a level of stability, so we can look at making sure that we have all of our needs met with our existing programs, but then look at ways that we can start to expand those. Staffing is always difficult for a summer program.
And here we should point out too that this is not just a recreation program. You have some
therapists,
very qualified people.
So we have a clinical side to our summer program with our children, and so we, to find folks that have the right credentialing and the right experience to meet pretty complicated needs of our campers in a residential setting is challenging, because we're asking them to dedicate 9 to 10 weeks of their summer, and not everyone's employment expectations allow them to do that.
Right.
So finding the clinical side, we also have full health care and dental care for our campers and our adults during Camp Independence. So we have a fully operational dental clinic and a health cottage on site as well. And so all of our campers will receive both medical and dental care during their stay. And so finding those folks that are appropriately credentialed is challenging. Likewise, finding the young people to be live-in counselors, because they are responsible for getting the kids to therapy, making sure they are prepared to engage in all of their activities throughout camp. And you know, we have a pretty wide range of offerings. The kids are having a camp experience. They're going camping.
Right.
They're going fishing. They're taking archery classes. They're in kayaks and canoes. And so the counselor is a really essential role. And it's challenging to find young people that are in a situation where they can give up, you know, 8 to 10 weeks of their summer.
You mentioned fundraising. I'm sure that's one of the big challenges. Do you receive any government support?
We receive some government support from the Department of Agriculture for our food, because we have a fully functioning restaurant. We're at Bay Cliff, and so feeding our campers 3 meals a day. There is some reimbursement through the government, just like there is for their school programs, because it's an extension of that. But other than that, most of our donors are private citizens and organizations.
And you've really established some partnerships that have gone back a long time, haven't they?
Yes.
Or Bay Cliff has.
Yes, yes, we have.
And are those continuing?
They are. We have some long-standing partnerships with many of our organizations, the Lions, the Elks, the Kiwanis. So we have a lot of, not only do they donate and do a lot of fundraising, you know, we recently just received a significant donation from the local Harley group,
right.
the Harley Hogs. You know, we have the Bay Cliff Open, a golf outing, and many, many, many people within the Marquette community contribute to that.
I believe I noticed in the story about this Harley Hogs, they've contributed more than $1.3 million.
Yes, they have.
Years.
Yes, they have.
That's outstanding.
It's wonderful.
So we're just about out of time. We've got a little time. Well, we actually have a minute left. But anything else you want to do to put your imprint on the Bay Cliff going forward?
Well, moving forward, I really want to encourage anyone in the community to come and visit. I think that words cannot describe Bay Cliff in a way that is representative of the work that goes on there. And I would encourage anyone of interest, whether it's from a donor's interest or possible summer employment, please get a hold of me. Come and visit. We'd love to have you. We're wonderful, wonderful hosts, and would really like to encourage anyone to come up and see us.
And I do notice there's a welcome reception for you on September
There is.
27th, 5 to 8 at the Holiday Inn of Marquette. So
Yes, and I'm really looking forward to meeting everyone in the community.
and everyone's welcome to that.
Yes, they are.
Thanks very much for coming in
You're
this morning.
very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Glad
Claire.
to be here.
I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Well, every once in a while we like to have fun with words and language, so let's give it a try this morning. It seems kind of fitting as kids are getting set to head back to school. You know, when you're a kid in school, one of the things you learn about is vocabulary. What do certain words mean? For the most part, it always seemed very specific. For example, a shirt, a cloth garment for the upper body. Blue is a color like the sky or sea on a sunny day. Clearly, we could go on forever with a list of words that have a simple, specific definition. But that's not always the case, which can make it difficult for kids trying to learn vocabulary or people from other countries trying to learn our language. Case in point is the word spelled P-O-S-E. There's only one way to say it, pose, but a lot of different meanings. We all know how we can pose for a picture, but we can also pose a question, which means to ask a question. We can also pose as someone if we pretend to be that person. And we can say that others are posing when they're trying to deceive us about who they are. he was posing as a doctor. Lots of different meanings for a little four-letter word. Then there's bolt, B-O-L-T. A bolt is a metal fastener, but it's also a bolt of lightning, and it can mean to run very fast, as he's bolted out the door. Just to confuse it even more, there's actually a runner named Bolt, but he adds a D to his name, so it doesn't really count. What we're talking about are homonyms, words which have the same spelling and pronunciation, but different meanings, not to be confused with homophones, which are words which have the same pronunciation, but different spellings and meanings, like the infamous there, which gives a lot of people trouble. They're going to their house, which is located over there. They all sound the same, but with three different spellings. Then we have homographs, those words that are spelled the same but have different pronunciations and meanings. L-E-A-D comes quickly to mind. Someone can lead the parade, but we avoid food or water containing lead. Both spelled the same, but pronounced differently. So what did we learn from this lesson today? Probably not much. Probably only this. What were those people who created these words thinking? Did they have some type of sadistic streak? Did they get together and say, here's a way we can really confuse people. Let's create a word pronounced there with three different meanings and three different spellings. I have to tell you, I've made a living writing and speaking words, but I don't always get it right. Effect and effect often leave me scratching my head, at least for a minute. Speaking of which, that's my story about words, so I'll be back in a minute. It's time for us to wrap it up for another week. Before we go, a reminder that you can get the latest news anytime, and you can also find this show as well at uppermichigansource.com. Thanks to Claire Luchin for joining us this morning. Bay Cliff Health Camp is truly a very special place, and it was good to meet the new person in charge. And thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend and that we can get together at the same time next Sunday morning.